Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the August meeting of the Milwaukee Area Wood Trimmers. I appreciate everyone who's here and everyone who's listening via Zoom. Looks like we have a good crowd this evening, and I know there's a whole bunch of folks on Zoom. So welcome to everybody. I'll start the meeting with, let's see, well, treasurer's report. That's quick. George is busy, so I'll just recite this. We started last month with $8,279 and some odd cents, and we have income of $265, mostly from membership and last month's raffle, so that was good. And we had no expenses last month, so we have a total now of $8,544 and some odd cents. And also, George informed me that we had a number of members who have renewed. And I believe one new member, so we have almost 90 members, which is really, really great. So I want to thank everyone who's joined and everyone who is getting involved and participating with the club. Really appreciate it. I don't have a lot to discuss this evening, but I just wanted to say that probably in December, we're going to have a special raffle besides our normal wood raffle. But in December, we would have our Christmas party, so we wouldn't have a wood raffle. We would have our ornament event. But we're also going to have a special raffle for some items that we've sort of acquired recently and also a while ago. And one of them was a very nice member who gave us a Rikon slow speed lathe with grinding wheels and the Wolverine grinding jig. And so that's a raffle in December. And there may be some other items in there too. And you will hear more about that via email and through my president's letter, just so you're aware of that. Next month, we're having a paid demonstrator. We've had him before, Harvey Meyer, excellent demonstrator. We had him in January, and he's going to be doing a demonstration next month, which, by the way, would be the second Monday because of Labor Day. So just so everyone's aware of that. And so, this evening, we have one of our own members. Kevin Seigworth is going to be demonstrating tonight, talking about sharpening. Speaking of grinders and Wolverine systems here, Kevin's going to talk about grinding that perfect edge to all your turning tools, whether it's scrapers or gouges, or I see parting tools, and I see all sorts of stuff here. So I will, we're going to first, before we start with Kevin, though, I forget these things, because it's been a while since I've been up here and done this. But we're going to do our show and tell. And I noticed there's a couple of small items up there that could be shown. Just kidding. So please bring your items. For you folks at home, our turners are slowly walking up to the table here and grabbing the items. Sooner or later, they'll be in front of me. Sure. Yeah.
So more kind of for floor. Made out of maple, more of a basket illusion is kind of like the term for it, whether it's mosaic or I think it's out of the basket illusion realm. But each layer, each ring is about 1 1/8 inches, I believe, thick, and 24 segments in each layer. Beaded, burned. All the rings I did with rubber band. So no band clamps, no whatever. All the rings were glued together with rubber band. And the real wide ones I did in 2 pieces and kind of sanded and then put together. Hollow inside like the other ones, Indian ink dyed, black ebonized dyed in the inside. These two I don't have the bottoms off yet. What I did for the bottoms is I have right here is a piece that's a little bit darker here, some Baltic birch, and then I have about a 3/8 inch piece of maple down below. So once I turn off the waste block on the bottom, I can still get a little contour on the bottom, and it'll just be maple, and I can beat it a little bit and add a little bit of decoration to the bottom. As far as turning the bottoms off, just real quick, I'm going to mount these in a big donut chuck, and I'll have a real small little faceplate kind of screwed right here, and I'll be able to kind of turn probably the outside 2 inches, 2.5 inches, and then I can put a bead on it, and then I can just put a live and real delicately kind of get it pretty close, and then kind of sand the rest, but it'll at least give me a solid hole where I can at least put like maybe 3 beads on the bottom. That's it.
Question.
Yes.
Those things are great. I'm just curious. What do you got as far as time going into this thing roughly?
Not as much as you think. Once you kind of start doing it, I bet
Well, guesstimate.
30 hours.
30 hours?
Yeah, sure. Cutting, I have a pretty good sled system set up with a designated stop, and I have little filler pieces between the stop and the blade, so I can cut 300 of these and then go back and cut 6 more 2 days later or an hour later, and they're exactly the same. So the cutting is kind of quick. I've got it on Instagram. I'm actually gluing up a segment like in under a minute, a 12 segment, probably 16-inch diameter with rubber bands. So the gluing isn't that bad. Indexing might take half hour to index it. I'll do like every other and then just kind of eyeball the middle one. And these don't have a lot of ink on them, so these actually aren't as bad to ink. Let's see. So there's 172 beads, and the pattern has 184 around the side. So multiplying both together and 28,000 maybe or something, I don't know, whatever it is. Anyway. But again, there's not a lot of inking, so it's not quite as bad as it looks.
Do you create those patterns?
What's that?
Do you create your own patterns or?
Yeah, these were, some of these were modified after some like blanket design, little things I saw, and then kind of modified them from there. Yeah.
Approximately where was it split when you turned part of the inside?
This one right here where the outside biggest radius, and this one I just did kind of here. And I'm going to make some kind of little cap tops for them, just for whatever. Right now I just have actually some sticks coming out of it. Well, I have a 2436 one way, so I think these may be like 22.5-ish or something like that, maybe. Anyway, fun making them.
What are you going to put inside of it?
Our granddaughter.
That's a hard act to follow. But, so I demoed last month, and this is the acorn that I threaded as part of the demo. So you can see when I haven't finished it out. But put it over on the table if you want to play with it. Feel free. And please don't lose my favorite. This is unique enough. It's not hard to tell. This is the jar that I brought, and it was partly done. And I wanted to talk about, how do you get the grain to match up? And actually, I did not have to turn anything off of it. I reshaped this profile, and I'm pretty pleased with that profile. Actually,
It looks
I
good.
think that's pretty decent. And when I reshaped it, I took a little bit off coming up under the cap. And so if you don't tighten it too tight and then back it off a little bit, then the grain lines up. So, but yeah. And then I called my sister this morning because I mumbled something about a barn that this came out of. I guess it came out of the house, not the barn. If you know where Bangor, Iowa is. Right, it's spelled like Bangor, man. It's in Marshall County, west of Marshalltown a little bit. It was a house that was built around 1865 and came down in the early 2000s. So I just think that's kind of interesting. And then just to prove I'm not a one-note band, I brought some pendants. I did 15 of them last week, and these are 5 of the prettiest ones, I think. So you guys look at me funny whenever I tell there's some of that hammer corkbark wood you've never heard of before and will never hear of again. It's considered an invasive species in Wisconsin. And lilac, black walnut, that came from up here in Brookfield. So yes, we do grow exotic woods in Wisconsin. This is red elm, came out of a stump in Waterford. And this is plum from the same guy on the same day that gave me the hammer corkbark wood.
Very good. Thank you, Tony.
Well, I've done a lot of turning over the years and probably somewhere in the neighborhood of around 400 pieces, bowls and stuff like that over the years. But I've kind of branched off. Years ago, there was this guy named Joe Zabel, and I took a course in Antarctica. And this goes back to the 13th century when the monks did this. It's not like marquetry. It's all different thicknesses, type of wood, and sometimes some of the pieces are made out of 1/8 of an inch thick, and some pieces are up to 2 inches. The fellow that I took this course from, a guy named is Joe Zabel, who's a retired lawyer. And the last piece that he made before he passed away was a 3-panel piece, like a stained glass window you'd see in a church. It was about so by so, and he had like 25,000 pieces of wood in this thing. And it's just something, you know, and I kind of branch off doing custom made things. I was telling one of the guys over here that I helped somebody restore a treadle back full-time sewing machine that was in their family for years, and the drawers were destroyed. So I had to steam bend the drawers and do some carving on them. So it's kind of like I've gotten away from turning, but I'm still in the wood making stuff. And I'm like occasionally just turning on the street rod now and again. So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. So I guess that's going to be it for our show and tell, and we'll have Kevin start his demo now. Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
Were you going to announce anything about the Empty Bowls event?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thanks for reminding me, Susie. As everyone knows, our club is involved with Empty Bowls. And Empty Bowls is our contact person, Colleen Bullard from Queen City Clay in West Dallas, is doing a sort of pop-up art show right outside of her shop studio, which is located on 71st and Greenfield. And that's going to be October 2nd, and they're going to sell bowls at that event, and people can buy soup and what you would normally expect when they would do an Empty Bowls event. And she would appreciate it if our club, and we have a few here, but I'd like to have more, and they would have to be here by the next meeting, which is the 12th or 13th or 14th of September. I forget exactly what day that is. Maybe it's the 15th of September, the second Monday, because she wants them by September 15th, and I can deliver them. That's not a problem because I don't live too far from her. So if you have both, please bring them in at the next meeting, and I will make sure that they get to.
Did you say that was a Zoom meeting? Next meeting is a Zoom meeting?
Oh, yes. Well, but it's still here too.
Okay.
Yes. Next week is next month is a Zoom meeting, but you can come here and watch it on the screens if you want to. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And so, but we also we'll Zoom it. But anyhow, the point is that I'd like to have these bowls. And if you can't make it to me, but you can make it to Woodcraft anytime, there is a box. There'll be actually a couple of boxes at the base of the steps that'll have a little sheet on it that says Empty Bowls on it. You can put them in there, and I will make sure to take those bowls. So, any questions?
Yeah, what was it? 6 inches diameter you wanted them with it?
they kind of vary, 6 inches to 7 inches, something in that effect. A halfway decent soup bowl size. About that thick, you know, 1.5 inches, 1.75 2 inches tops. And they could also be smaller diameter, but a little taller. You know, we're allowed to be creative. Any kind of wood, you can do anything to it. You can make it as simple as you want. The only main thing is you have to make sure whatever you put on it is food safe. Now, if you're making something more decorative, let me know that. And they have a special auction for bowls that are not for food use, but strictly for the sake of the artistic nature, the aesthetic nature of the bowl. So you can make a bowl that's not going to be used for soup, or it can be used for soup. So I guess that's it for now. Okay, no other questions? Great. Kevin, you're on.
Thank you, Ron. My microphone working? Am I coming through? No? I think it's on. Yeah. All right. Well, good evening.
Kevin.
Yes.
Just click it higher.
A little higher.
Yeah.
How's that? Any better?
Can you hear? Speak from the back. Can they hear?
Can you hear me in the back? Yeah, they can hear. Okay.
All
All right. Well, good evening. We are going to talk about sharpening lathe tools. And my plan of attack for that is to begin by talking a little bit about the equipment, grinders, wheels. We'll talk a little bit about tool steel, not too much, because I know there are a lot of people in here that know more about tool steel than I do. So I'm not going to spend much time on that. But then we're going to spend the bulk of the time actually sharpening the tools. So we will go through the tools kind of one by one. I will talk about what we're trying to accomplish when we sharpen this tool, kind of what the ranges are of norm, if you will. I mean, you can do anything you want to a tool and use it to accomplish, you know, the work that you're trying to do. But I'll talk more about standard ranges. For example, this is a spindle roughing gouge. Typically, the bevel is going to be ground somewhere between 35 and 50 degrees. Almost anything in there is fine. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about why there are standards like that. And of course, ask questions as we go. But so I'm going to take each tool and sharpen it. So I've got a spindle roughing gouge. I've got some parting tools, a couple different kinds of parting tools. We've got a skew. We've got a negative rate scraper. And then we've got several, well, we've got a spindle gouge like that. And then 3 different bowl gouges. So one with kind of a traditional grind, a very stubby nose, and it has a very particular place where it shines. We'll talk about a fairly standard fingernail grind on a gouge, on a bowl gouge, and why that is extremely useful. And then I will also give a go at doing a kind of a freehand grind without a jig. So not something I do. I don't turn every day. I personally believe that if you turn every day, you can sharpen without jigs, and it's faster and it works fine. But I don't turn every day and I don't sharpen every day. So when I freehand grind, it's a little bit hit and miss sometimes. And that's why we're going to talk about this one-way Wolverine jig system, which is, it works great. A lot of turners use it, even professional turners use it. And it is, I would say, the standard, if you will. So that's kind of where we're headed. We'll talk a little bit about honing too, because some people hone their tools. So I've got some diamond hones here, a semi-rounded diamond hone here. I've got some wooden jigs to help you set your grinder up. I'll talk about those and what you can do. Protractor here to measure your bevel angles. So that's kind of it. So let's talk about the equipment. And this is the club's equipment here. And I would say that this is just about perfect. It's an 8-inch slow speed grinder. So 1,725 RPM. That is kind of the ideal. But if you don't have that, it's okay. You can use a high-speed grinder, especially for turning tools, because almost all the turning tools that we're going to use today are high-speed steel. So we don't really have to worry too much about burning them. The old carbon steel, you really didn't want to burn because then the metal got soft and it didn't hold an edge anymore. But these, you can actually burn them and they'll hold an edge. I think you can go up to 750 degrees. I think as long as you stay shy of red hot, something like that, you're probably not going to damage your edge too much. So you could use a high-speed grinder if that's all you had. You could use a 6-inch wheel if that's all you had. It's not ideal, but it certainly works. So if you don't have something, you're going to bring something. I would say something like this is the ideal. So that's a dry bench grinder. Some people also use the wet grinders like the Tormex, and that works too. My take on that is that it's a little bit slower than this. The advantage of the Tormex is it's got a lot of nice jigs, and you're never going to burn your edge, even on a high carbon steel tool. You're really not going to burn your edge because the wheel turns, I think it's like 90 RPM, and it's in a water bath, so you're not going to burn the edge. So that's an option. A lot of people sharpen their turning tools with like the Tormex. The other option, there are some sanding grinders. So there's some that are on a belt. So you've got a jig here, the belt's running like this, and you're rotating your tool like that. And those are fine too. They're fast. You get a flat grind to the bevel on your tool as opposed to a hollow grind. It's probably not all that important, but to me, my personal opinion is that I don't really want to be constantly replacing belts and sandpaper wears out, and so I think this is the standard. I also used to talk a lot about wheels, and I don't know, you probably can't see this wheel here. It's a white wheel. It's stone. Yeah, there you go. So that's an aluminum oxide wheel. So if you bought a grinder and it came with the gray wheels, those are good for sharpening your lawnmower blades, and that's about it. They're very hard, and because they're so hard, they're going to burn almost anything except softer steel, like a lawnmower blade. So really, they're not adequate for sharpening turning tools. You want to at least have these aluminum oxide wheels. Mostly they're white, but some of them are also pink. Sometimes they're blue. Anything but that hard gray that came with a fairly expensive grinder. I used to talk a lot about wheels, 8-inch wheel, 1-inch wide at a 1-inch hub. You wanted to get a certain hardness, like a J or a K hardness is what you want for turning tools. So hardness of wheels ranges from A, which is very, very soft, to Z, which is very, very hard. So the very, very hard wheels, the Z, is for very soft steel, and the really hard steel, you would use really soft wheels like an A. So for turning tools, high-speed steel, a J or a K wheel, 1-inch, 8-inch ideal. So that's the stone. Also, you could get 3M made a wheel. It was a seeded gel. I think it was 3X seeded gel. They were blue. They were just a little bit more friable than these, so they broke away faster. So you always had a fresh cutting edge, and so they cut faster than a standard aluminum oxide wheel like this. But in this day and age, I don't really see a reason for anybody to go out and buy a stone wheel anymore. If you have it, you can continue to use it. If someone gives you one, you could use it. But if I was going to buy a wheel, I would definitely buy the new CBN wheels, cubic boron nitride. The prices have come down to the point where that's really not an issue any longer, because one of these wheels is supposed to last 5 to 6 times as long as a stone wheel. So they're not really that much more expensive. They're maybe double the price or cool. So they're price performers. They never get smaller, so they always maintain the same diameter. They run very cool because they're either aluminum or steel, which acts as a heat sink. So it takes the heat out of your tool into the wheel rather than the tip of your tool heating up. They run cool. They don't wobble. They don't bounce. They don't get out of round. You don't have to true them up like you have to true these up every once in a while, or dress them with a diamond dresser. So really, there's just no reason to not buy a CBN wheel. So any questions on the equipment? Yes.
If you were to recommend a grit for those CBN wheels, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so kind of for average everyday sharpening, 180 is the standard, if you will, which sounds high, right? Because we're probably used to grinding with like an 80 grit wheel here. So yeah, that's one other thing I could have said about wheels. If you were shaping an edge, maybe something like a 46 grit wheel. But for sharpening, something around 80 grit was the standard for sharpening. But for the CBN, the 180 grit CBN wheel will cut faster than the 80 grit. 220, 180, they're so close, they're interchangeable. So I think this one's a 220, is that? Yeah, 220 and 600 on this side. So and if you're going to do some shaping and you don't have like a 46 grit aluminum oxide wheel, they make these in 80. I don't know if they get any lower than that. I know they make them in 80. So I would have maybe an 80 for shaping, changing the shape on the tool, and then I'd do my sharpening on a 180. Now the club also has a 600, and it's my understanding from everything that I've seen and read that this doesn't really improve the usability of the tool. You might think like if you are sharpening hand planes or chisels or something like that, the more you polish it, the more durable the edge is. But for turning, it doesn't seem to make a lot of difference. Probably because when you're turning, the machine here is providing the power, so you don't have to push it through the wood. So it's powering through there, even though it's not sharpened as high as you sharpen a chisel. And the other thing, when you turn something, you're probably going to sand. Unlike with woodworking, if you hand plane something, that probably is the final finish. So the polish on your blade translates to the finish on the wood. Here we don't care so much about that. If we take a 180 grit surface here and we take it to our wood, we're probably going to sand beyond 180 anyway. So it really doesn't seem to matter. So is that long-winded answer? Yeah, 180 or 80. So that's the equipment. This has got the very grind. The used to be Wolverine, then One Way bought it. So the One Way Wolverine very grind system. It consists of these two platforms here that you mount to the platform that your grinder is on, and instructions come with it. It has to be, I believe it's 6.5 inches from the center of the spindle here is what is suggested, and you get this V-arm attachment, which is used with the very grind jig, which sits in here and gives you that fingernail grind without having to spend weeks or months learning how to do it by hand. And these things work great. They're very fast, very repeatable. They're fabulous. And then they also come with the platform. So we're going to use both. We're going to mostly use the platform, but for the gouges, we're going to use the V-pocket arm. So this is the one that either belongs to the club or belongs to that grinder. I don't know. But I brought mine along, but mine is mounted different than this one, so it doesn't line up. But the only thing I wanted to show you on this one is that I cut out a little notch here with, I think it was a Dremel and a cutoff wheel, and it just allows me to wrap around my grinding wheel here, so I can get closer to it. And I can also, I've got a platform on the side. So not necessary, but something you might consider doing to your platform. So I'm going to start with the spindle roughing gouge. So I think mine is ground to something around 45 degrees, but as I mentioned, the standard is from 35 to 50. Yeah, and it's ground flat on the rest. One thing with this tool, you'd like the edge to be kind of straight across like this. So it's got no shape to it. It's just ground straight across. And if you're going to do spindle turning and turn pommels, you want to be careful on the corners that you don't over rotate and take your corners off, because those corners are used to turn a pommel on a spindle. You get right up to a square edge with that. I don't really do that, so I'm not quite as that careful on the corners. I'm mostly using this to take square stock down the round. So that's that. One thing I forgot, I said I was going to talk about tool steel a little bit. And so all of my tools are M2 high-speed steel, which is kind of the standard. It's fairly reasonably priced, and it takes a very sharp edge, but there are some more different steel alloys that will hold an edge longer. So the difference in edge holding on the steel has to do maybe more than this, but predominantly how much vanadium is in the steel, in the alloy. So this M2 steel has 2% vanadium, M4 has 4% vanadium, and it starts to go up when you get to the powdered metal tools, like the Thompson tools. And I saw George has got a Thompson negative rake scraper here. So those are the powdered metal technology, and those have 10% vanadium. So they hold an edge really long, like 5 to 6 times longer than this. A little bit more expensive. And yeah, vanadium, you can also get the up to 15% vanadium is kind of the limit. When you get beyond 15, the steel gets too hard and it's too brittle. So 15 is kind of the upper limit. But the different steels, you can look online, there are charts that will show you kind of the price versus the edge durability versus how sharp you can get it. And you can decide what you like. Somebody here tonight mentioned M42 steel, which seems kind of almost perfect for wood turners, but I think it's a little bit more expensive. I'm not sure. Most of my tools are old. They're either secondhand or had them for a while. Okay, so that was steel. So to sharpen this, you can, kind of a low-tech way to do this is to just take some kind of a marker and color in your bevel like that. I'm using red. I hope that shows up on the camera. And you just can kind of go up to your platform here and sort of by eye get as close as you can. So that's fairly close. So, and then give it a spin, rub it up against and see where you're removing magic marker, and then adjust from there. When you're doing this, I'm sure you know, if you're going to spin it, spin this one, don't spin this one, because some people have spun that wheel and the finger carries right on down into the edge of the tools. But if I spin that one, then I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to touch it, and I'm going to look at this. And Tom, I don't know if you can see, but the marker is taken off just at the heel here. So I know that I have to tip my platform forward a little bit because I want to sharpen that whole bevel. I don't want to just hit the edge. If you try to do this by hand, you're going to be hitting and missing. So kind of the way to do it is just give it a couple taps, give it another spin. There we go. You can see we've got magic marker along the full length of our bevel. So we are now ready to do that. Now, you also, rather than doing that every time, you can just make some simple little jigs yourself. So this is just a piece of scrap wood. And on here, I've got 25 degrees for like grinding a plain blade. And here's 40 degrees for my, for hand grinding my bowl gouge. But it's just, once you got it, you could measure the edge here with a protractor and know that you have that exactly. And then just make a template to this setting here. So this just rides on the wheel like that. When it's flat on the platform, I'm at whatever I have here. So you could just do something as simple as that, or you could do something a little bit more elaborate like this, which can be used to set the V-arm. You could do that, or you can also use this to set the platform. And this is similar to, I got the idea from, what's that jig that Craft Supply sells? The Rapture. Rapture setup tools. So they've got nice metal tools with all the different angles, and you can use it to set your platform for that, or you make your own. So we're set up at 45 degrees is my memory for this tool. And I'm just gonna put my safety glasses on. So with this tool, this is like the easiest tool to sharpen, which is why I'm starting there. What we're going to do is just make sure we hold it on the platform, and we're just going to rotate it around like this. So no swing whatsoever. It's just rotate from one corner to the other. So let's go ahead and do that. So one hand is going to hold the tool. I feel really weird doing that to the audience, but I think this is about the only way we can do it. You're going to probably have to look at the monitor. So this hand here is just going to hold this tool down to the platform. What I don't want is for this to come off the platform either way, because then I'm not staying at a consistent angle. The other thing I don't want to do is grab my tool at the back here, because then I will tend to lift it. So I'm going to hold it up here. And so I'm on the platform, I'm holding it down. I'm going to start here. And just go. So you can see that I've taken all the marker off the cutting edge. There's a little blob right there. I must have lifted up. But this tool is ready to go now. Ready to use. It's perfectly sharp. And that's it for that tool. Any questions on this spindle roughing gouge? Pretty straightforward. Okay, next tool is the parting tool. So this is called a diamond parting tool because it's got kind of a diamond shape. It's thicker in the middle here than it is at the top. And the purpose for that is to kind of prevent you from getting your tool too far into a 1/8 inch groove and getting it stuck in there. So this kind of is a little bit of a safety feature. Although, you know, I'm sure you all know that when you use this tool, you maybe go in, you know, 1/8 of an inch, and then you've got to widen that space just a little bit. If you go all the way in with this, it's liable to grab the tool and maybe pull it out of your hands. At least that's a possibility. So this is a diamond parting tool. The only trick to this is you would like to keep the point at the widest part of the tool. So right here is the widest part of the tool. You'd like to keep the point there. You don't have to have symmetrical edges. You could have a longer edge and a shorter edge if you wanted. You just want them to meet at the middle. Now this tool typically, I mean, you've got a lot of range as to your angles, but I'm going to introduce something new called an included angle. So rather than this angle where we would have measured it with with this protractor, like this, let me go back. And we would have got 45 degrees. So that's a single double tool. If you read or hear about included angles, that just means that's both angles. So you would check it like this, both angles. So this might be 35, that might be 35. The included angle is 70. So for parting tools, a lot of people just don't even bother. You just kind of freehand it because it doesn't really make much difference. Anywhere from say 45 to 70. And I don't even know what I have on this, but I'm going to use the magic marker. Again, I'm just going to color that edge, come over to my platform and adjust it. So just kind of by eye. That looks pretty close. Now I'll give it the test to see if I'm on it. And I'm hitting just, again, on the heel. I've got to make the platform tilt forward. Okay, hitting the tip. I'm just going to go with it. I think my setup at home is just a little bit different, so we're probably going to change some angles. But all we're going to do with this tool on the platform again, we're going to sharpen one, and we just want to get to the tip, to the cutting edge, and then we're going to flip it and grind until we get to the edge on that surface. One trick that you can use if you want a little bit cleaner cuts when you're parting is whatever face is going to be up, you grind that first. So if I wanted to cut with this tool this way, I am going to grind this and then this, and that leaves the burr up, and that will cut cleaner on an entry parting cut. We want the burr to be up. Let's give this a go. I'm just trying to take this tool, kind of keeping it straight. So I don't want to have any swing. I just want to keep it on the platform and hold it at 90 degrees to the wheel. I can see sparks coming over the top, so I know, I'm at the tip there. Now I'm just going to do the other side. Like I said, I'm not grinding the full bevel. I think it's either, this is not my platform either, nor my wheel, so something's a little bit different. But this is fine. It doesn't really matter, because the only thing touching the wood is this. This is a scraping tool. This is also like a negative rate scraper, if you think about it that way. And we'll talk more about negative rate scrapers. But why don't I just start passing these things around? I don't know where you, should I start here? Okay. So you can see how fast this goes, right? It's pretty quick. Here's another scraper. This is a handmade one. So this is an old bandsaw blade with the teeth ground off. And this is, I brought this along just to show you what an asymmetrical shape would look like. So it doesn't have to meet in the middle. Both bevels don't have to be the same. And this is just a little handle I made to fit my hand. And I have another one like this that's thinner. It's a 16th inch bandsaw blade. So if I need a real thin part, then I'm not going to do this because it's exactly the same as that. And if I was smart, I would have the same angle on this tool that I have on that tool, so I don't have to adjust the platform. But I'm not that smart yet. But someday I will. So I'll pass this around too. So that's just another format.
The guys used to make a parting tool out of one of his old butter knives.
Yeah, sure. I don't know how good that steel is, but that's a thin, if you're looking for something really thin, I suppose, that would be good, yes.
So you ground off the teeth.
Did I hear right that if you touch the CBN wheel, that's right.
Go ahead, yeah, I'll come back to him, but go ahead with your question.
If you touch the CBN wheel with carbon steel, it's toasted.
You don't want to do that. This is like soft steel. So you don't want to run your platform into your CBN wheel because it clogs up the spaces between the cubic boron nitride. Now, I believe there are ways, I heard people say that you can clean it just by sharpening high-speed steel, but I don't know that because I've never done it. There are also, I just saw recently somebody's making a cleaner for this, like a magic eraser. Dave.
Wooden Wonders has an eraser for cleaning the CBN wheels, and they work pretty well.
Does it take carbon steel out if you get it?
It'll take lead out.
Okay, so there you go. And I think they're pretty cheap, aren't they, Dave?
Yeah, they're like $10 a stick.
Yeah, right. So good point. Yeah, you don't want to do your lawnmower blades with a CBN wheel, and you don't want to push your platform into it. And I'm sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, I just, on the one you bandsaw blade.
Yes.
Did you use the same grinder to grind all the teeth off? Or did you just?
No, because that, I'm not sure what that steel is. So I used my old stone 46 grit. I'm just trying to haul those things off. Yeah, yeah, I did. I guess if that was hardened steel, which it must be, it's a bandsaw, but it's got to be hardened steel. It probably would be okay to use this, but I didn't want to use it. My wheel is 220. I didn't want to stand there all day with 220, so I took 46 grit. You know,
it's only hardened in the area of the teeth. It's not, you know, the whole blade isn't.
Yeah, you're right. They probably just hardened the teeth, but that was all I was taking off. But yeah, you probably want something coarser. So. Were there any other questions? Okay, so that's that is the scrapers. I'm sorry, the parting tools, not scrapers, parting tools. So let's go to the skew. So here's a skew. Lots of different ways to grind your profile on here. Mine, I keep changing it. So sometimes I had it just straight across. Sometimes I had a pretty pronounced curve, you know, pretty good arc on it. This is sort of where I am right now. For the most part, it's pretty straight up here and just a little bit of a radius on the short corner. So traditionally, it's called a skew because the edge is round at a 70-degree skew angle. So, you know, from here to there, if this was 90, that's 70. And the included angle is somewhere around 40 to 50 degrees. So 20 or 25 degrees on each side. And that is typically how you would sharpen the skew. Other people will you can just do it by eye too. There's the way you can just say like 1.5 times the thickness of your skew. If you make your bevel that long, that's about 40 degrees. I have this handy dandy little protractor, which is cheap and easy. So I use this to make sure, you know, when I was first setting this up. The other thing with a skew, it helps to, I don't know if you can zoom in on this, like the bottom corners are rounded off slightly here. And the top corners are just eased a little bit. Because this is a tool when you're turning. This over here. When you're turning with this tool, you're typically, it's not flat, it's up.
Move the tail stock out of it.
Okay, yeah. See now? Yeah, okay. So typically when you skew, it's tipped up like this. And if that edge is still sharp, it digs into your tool rest. So you round that over. The best way to do that is on like a belt a belt sander or something with 220 grit that rounds over pretty well, just so that you can get it up here, get it at the proper angle, and move it along smoothly. And you go in both directions, of course. The top, typically you would use the long point of this view maybe for V grooves. So you're going to tip it slightly, which is why the edges are just E's, they're not all the way rounded over. Because you're not really tipping this down, not much like you're tipping this. So that's how you would prepare the skew. 70 degrees, something about a 40-degree included angle. I'm going to color that edge again. You want to grind the full bevel on this tool, and then a lot of people also think that performance is improved by honing. So we will hone the edge on this, and there are a lot of ways to do that. You can use these little diamond hones. These things work very, very well. These are the DMT paddles. You can buy a little diamond tool like this, where it's flat here and got a radius on the bottom. You could also do this on a full-size stone if you wanted to. You know, before we had all these fancy tools, you could just use you know, just a stone, like an India stone or something, you know, a wire stone, something like that. But now, you know, the diamond or a CBN works probably the best. It's certainly fast. So I'm looking. Got to get a little steeper here because I know I'm at about 20. No, let's see where we're at here. With this tool, when you grind it, you want to approach the grinding. You want to keep the cutting edge at 90 degrees to the wheel. So if I'm cutting down here, you're going to see that I'm going to swing this tool. So I'm going to both pin it to the rest, and I'm going to swing it for that arc. And I want the grinding marks. You can see that. I don't think the camera will pick this up, but the grinding marks follow. So they come straight like this, and that just helps the performance of the tool cut better like that. Okay, we're pretty good there. We got most of the marker off, so I'm going to stay with this. Also, a good tip if you're doing a lot of work with one tool, like if you're roughing out a bowl or something, and you get this set up, don't change it. Just keep it there because you can just keep coming back with that tool to the same settings. Yes.
Kevin, a quick question on this guy.
Yes.
I've always used it like this.
Yeah, that's the way I would do.
And I just saw some professional turner, you know, on YouTube using it this way.
Right.
There's no reason not to, right? Does anybody have one of these and use it this way?
I use it like that.
Like this?
Not
Always?
any authority, but I use it like that.
Always or?
Always with the longer end
Yeah.
on the top. Yeah, it just seems to
Yeah.
be more instinctive for me to
Use like this too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the standard way to use it would be the longer bevel up and the short one down, and that's why you sharpen the short one last to put the burr up, and you get a cleaner cut, entry cut with the tool. Yeah, to me, I just thinking about it right now, I think you have better support with the cutting edge closer to the tool rest. So that's why I would use it with the short edge at the bottom, because it's right next, it's supported right here, taking the downward force. But apparently it works both ways. So I don't think there's a wrong way. But okay, so we're gonna put on the goggles and we'll sharpen up the skew. What I'm going to do here is this thumb is just going to pin it, and I'm going to pivot around it a little bit. And this hand is just going to follow whatever shape I want to put on my skew. know, it's kind of swung up to get that rounded, that radius corner. So that one's done. There's a burr on this side now. I'm going to sharpen the other side. Exactly the same, except backwards. Okay, as long as I've got kind of fresh grinding marks, I'm done. But like I said, with a skew, oftentimes the skew is used, it's only used on spindle work, of course. And if you're proficient with this tool, it will leave a surface that you probably don't even have to sand, maybe 600 grit. It's a very smooth surface if you hone it. So to hone this, I like to use these because they're very light and I can really feel the edge. What you're doing is you're taking, right now is a 220 grit edge and you're making it a 600 grit edge. So it's just sharper, taking that bigger burr off. You can really feel, if you've got some of the tools coming around, use your fingernail on you can feel the burr that's on the upside when you grind it. But this will take most of that off. What we want to do is not make a big micro bevel on here. We just want to take the burr off and get this to 600. So just a couple of strokes. I got to get this kind of in the light where I can see it. Maybe something like this. And it's just a couple of quick strokes. I've got one part of this surface resting on this edge here, and then it's hollow ground in the middle. So if I stay on this and that, I'll just be touching the edge. What you have to guard against is letting it come off of that bottom surface there and come up here, because then you'll round your edge over and you'll make the performance. So if you do hone, and you use the tool and it's not working, that's most likely that you did. Go regrind it and try it again. So, and again, I'm going to try to stay kind of parallel to the cutting edge when I do this. So that, again, not much, just so there should be no on this edge and just a very fine one on this edge. And when you're first starting, you use the magic marker again, and you'll see that it takes it, that you're taking that off, and then you'll know for sure. You can also, if your eyes are good enough, you can see if you've gotten the edge or not. So. So that's honing. Any questions on that? On the skew? Okay. Great. Skew can be used as a negative rate scraper. You just hold it flat on here like this. So if you just want to take just minute little shavings on something, you're trying to sneak up on something, you can use the skew just flat like this. And you don't have to trail the edge like you would on a standard scraper, because the edge is already tilted down for you because it's a negative grade. So it can't just be used flat like this. It's also a good use for the skew. Okay, so this tool here is a standard scraper, but I've ground it to a negative rate. And all the negative rate is rather than, if this were a standard scraper, the top would be flat and the bottom bevel would be anything that gives you clearance from hitting the wood. So anywhere from, say, 80 degrees, back to 40 or so, you could do that with a standard scraper. And that tool is just sharpened. Just that one bevel is sharpened on the grinder, and then it leaves a burr up at the top, and you can cut with that. On the standard scraper, the harder the wood, the more obtuse the angle. So if I was cutting cocobolo or some other tropical hardwood or antler or bone or something, maybe 80-degree bevel, because I want the durability of the more blunter edge. And I would probably also hone that burr off with something like this. I would just take the burr right off of there. And I'm just scraping with that sharp edge. But that only works on really hard, dense material. If there's a burr on there, it's too aggressive on really hard material like that. And by taking the burr off, it's a little less aggressive. For North American hardwoods, you probably, if you're using a scraper, just sharpen it on your wheel and cut with that burr. It's fine for North American hardwoods. If you have a softer wood, like say you were turning pine for some reason, it does help to have a more acute angle. So maybe something more like 40 degrees. And that'll put a bigger burr up here. It'll be a little bit sharper and it'll cut softwood like pine better than say 90-degree relief angle down here. The bigger the burr, the more durable the burr is. And to get a bigger burr, you want a coarser wheel. So if I was using a standard scraper and I wanted a nice big burr, I would probably go back to my 46 grit stone wheel. So that's just some of the nuances of that. So this is a negative rate scraper. The reason that this tool is useful is that it's less aggressive in use than a standard scraper because it's got the two bevels, included angles. It's typically something around 20 to 25 on each side. So an included angle of 40 to 50 degrees. And because that edge approaches the wood at this kind of negative angle, negative rake angle, almost think of it like a sawtooth, it's less aggressive. So it's useful for that. The edge can be ground to almost any shape. It could be a spear point for getting into tight spots. Could be, for bottoms of boxes. They could have square edges. I find that a radius is useful for me, and this can be used either way up. Whatever, if I wanted to get this part into a corner over here, I'm going to want to use it this way up, not this way. So I'm going to want to make sure that I grind this edge first and then this edge. And that puts the burr up and it'll cut best. So it cuts with the burr. You can feel it. I think people say typically the burr is going to last about 30 seconds in one spot. So if I was using it here, maybe 30 seconds. If I rotate it, I get another 30 seconds. So it doesn't last long. That's why some people would just leave the thing, if you're turning by yourself in your shop and nobody else there, just leave your grinder running, go back to your work. Yes?
Not all negative rate scrapers come with a point.
Right. It could be any shape you want. It could be a spear point, could be a radius.
Could be a block.
Could be square. Yeah, whatever you need it to be. You grind it to do that.
But you can't use that either way. It's a block point.
If it's negative rate, you can.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's a standard scraper, let me draw it maybe. So a standard scraper would be like this. That you're only going to use this way. Here's your grinding wheel. And it puts the burr up there on the top. And that's what's doing the cutting when it's cutting the best. It'll still cut when you wear that off, but you're probably going to get dust and powder. This will take nice shavings. Right? And this is that relief angle I was talking about. If you were doing hardwood, maybe it would be a higher angle like that and something a little less. I don't know, Jim, you use a lot of scrapers. What do you need to measure it?
I go with the standard. I don't use a negative rate, and I use about 80 degrees.
80 degrees?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You just need clearance.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And this tool should be the edge should trail down, right?
Right.
Whereas with this one, this negative rate, I'm just gonna hold it flat. I don't have to trail it down.
So like those two things there, we're just done with the standard scraper.
Yes, I know, yeah, you use a lot of scrapers, yeah. So you can get a lot of nice work done with a scraper. Yeah, so here's negative rate. Now this one, I think I did try, I just took a little piece of hardboard like this and cut a V-notch, and I use this for my, I know that this is 50 degrees, so let me see how close I can get. Again, I just rest the 2 points on the wheel, get it on the platform. Probably moved on me. So this is just kind of like sharpening the skew. Not a lot of difference between this and a skew, except maybe the shape of the edge. And not quite as sharp of an angle, where the skew was an included angle of about 40. This is a little bit higher. This is more like 50, because you want that edge to be a little bit more durable. With the skew, you're rubbing the bevel as well with the skew, so that edge lasts much longer on a tool if you can rub the bevel. With this tool, we're not rubbing the bevel, we're just cutting with the burr, so doesn't not last as long. So I've missed pretty good with this one. So my little paper is not working with this. We're gonna have to manually adjust. So. All right, we'll call that good. We'll go with it. Same thing. One hand just holds this to the rest, and the other one swings it to follow whatever shape you have selected for whatever job you're doing. It's got to fit your project. You'll see lots of different bubbles on here because I keep changing depends on what I'm using it for. I keep changing the shape or the angles or whatever. But with this tool, we're not rubbing the bevel, so the only thing that counts is the burr. So you'll feel on one bevel, you won't feel any burr, but on the other one, you'll feel a pretty good sized burr. If you haven't done that before, just be careful. Don't run your finger along the burr like this, go across it. If you go this way, you'll probably cut your finger. You don't really want to do that. But feel how big that burr is. Yeah. Break right now? Okay. Good time. So, so we're going to take a break.
Yeah, we're going to take a little break here for about 5 or 10 minutes. A reminder, we have a wood raffle. We have tons of wood here, and give me a couple of minutes and I'll get the raffle tickets and the raffle bowl set up. So $1 a ticket, 6 for $5. A lot of great wood here. So make sure you do that. And you have a chance to buy it during the break. And then before we do the raffle, we have some more time to buy some tickets.
Oh, is that somebody's house?
Yeah.
Okay, at the break, a number of people came up, and one of the topics.
Janet's house.
There are some recommendations to sharpen the spindle roughing gouge using the V-arm like this. And that is possible. It can be done. It is, I believe, in the instructions that come with the Wolverine. Most people that I know and things that I've read recommend that you're better off to do it the way I showed it on the platform. It's simple, it's fast, you've got better control of the tool. This way, there's just a little bit of potential rocking and movement back here when this is in the V-arm. But also, if you start getting down, you know, close to here on the wheel, you've got a danger of that getting down in there and getting jammed. And it just makes me nervous. I don't do it that way. And plus, the platform is, a lot of people would say, you know, a better way. But if that works for you and you're comfortable with it, that's fine. That's the beauty of turning, and it's the beauty of sharpening too. If it works for you, it works. There's no reason, you know, as long as it's safe. Okay, so we've done all those tools. All we have left are the gouges. So we are going to do a fingernail grind on the gouges. And this one here is, this one's a traditional grind, if you will. It's, the wings aren't swept back. The bevel comes up here and it's pretty consistent all the way around. Maybe the wings are swept back instead of 90. Maybe they're back at 85 like this, but not much of a back sweep. And this has this tool ground like this traditional grind is very useful for a platter or the bottom of a bowl. It's very good on end grain. It cuts very cleanly, which is the beauty of that. This is the fingernail grind, which is a more, how shall I say, more flexible grind. This can do just about everything. So this traditional grind is not very good on the side of a bowl, the outside or the inside. I mean, it's okay, but this is much more flexible because you can both cut the inside and the outside, but you can also use it as a shear scraper. So this tool can be used say I was doing, you know, the inside of a bowl coming through like this, but on the outside, not on the inside, but on the outside, I can take the tool, tip it up, tip the edge up like this, and shear scrape. So instead of having to go grab another tool, the shear scraper, you can shear scrape with the wing of this tool. And if you're getting tear out, this is really useful too, because the more straight up and down you get this, so straight up would be 90, you probably wouldn't cut, but say 85, that will just defeat tear out like you wouldn't believe it. If you want to cut a little bit more aggressively, get your cutting edge at about 45 degrees. And you can just take all the little ridges and bumps out of the outside, refine the nice curve you're looking for with that. You're not going to take a lot of wood off, you're just refining, taking ridges and bumps or tear out. So that's why the fingernail grind is so popular, and it can be done by hand. We're gonna do this 3/8 bowl gouge by hand on a platform at the end. But first, we're gonna do these gouges. We're gonna do the spindle gouge and the bowl gouge with the very grind. So bowl gouge, the flute's below center of the tool of the shaft. Spindle gouge, the flute is right at the center of the shaft. And this tool is used on spindles, not really on bowls. It's not as strong and sturdy as the bowl gouges. Can't take the force, can't take the overhang over the rest that these tools can. So it's really ideal for spindle. Now you can use it on a bowl for like putting the dovetail foot on or something like that. That's fine, but I wouldn't try to hollow anything with this. Oh, here's one other trick. If your tool starts to get old and short and your very grind won't, you're running out of flute, you can grind a flat on here like this on your grinder. And now you've got more space to get your very grind out. So as long as we're talking about this one, let's talk about the spindle gouge. Anywhere, I've seen people, like somebody was mentioning Cindy Drozda, I believe she goes like 30 degrees, so very acute, very steep bevel. That's going to be an aggressive tool. So the more pointy your tool is, this, you know, like a 30-degree bevel angle, that's going to be a more aggressive, grabby tool. So you better be a pretty good turner. If you make your bevel stubby, like if you're a raw beginner and you're doing a bowl gouge, stubbier would be safer for you, maybe 50 degrees. It's going to cut well, but it won't be so grabby. It won't try to self-feed. You'll have more control over that tool. I believe I'm at about 40 degrees here on my spindle gouge. You'll see that my wings are way back, but you really don't use the wings on a spindle gouge. It's just metal that's in the way. And if you're trying to get in on a fine, like trying to do a finial or something, you know, real tight, you just want those wings out of the way. So my wings are just kind of around way back. They almost look flat. But we're going to do this with the very grind jig and the Wolverine V-pocket arm, like this. So this jig, what this jig does is it allows you to make that fingernail shape, and all you have to do is rotate the tool. You set the nose angle by the distance that you set this from the wheel. That sets the nose angle. The wing angle, so here's the nose, that's set by how far away from the wheel you are. The wing angle over here is set by this leg here. There's a nut. Move this guy where you want, and by the wing angle, I'm talking about this. I like to have the same angle on the wing that I have on the nose. It makes for a very consistent tool, the welded egg tool. And if you take the leg on this and you push it all the way forward, what that does is it grinds more off the bottom here. So this wing, rather than it curving in slightly, it's going to be very steep. And it makes a very aggressive, very grabby wing that can be hard to control, not necessarily, you know, with good edge retention. If you take that leg and you move it all the way back, the farther back you move it, the more that tilts this wing in. If you tilt it too far in, it's not sharp enough to cut well. So I think the recommendation for this is to pick a setting and stick with it as long as it's working for you. Don't mess around moving it. If you read the directions, it says, oh, for spindle gouges, we put it here. For bowl gouges, we put it there. Just pick something and stick with it. I've got mine set at the top of the second notch. There are some people like Craft Supplies would recommend setting this. It ends up being set, it's 23 degrees from the bottom of the flute, if you will. So somebody was asking me about that angle before. So from here to here, it's 23 degrees. And you can measure it or just set at the top of the second notch and got it. If you're going to use the Raptor setup tools, those tools I told you can buy that will let you set the angles on the platform and this, and you have to set this at 23 degrees for the Raptor setup tools to be accurate. If you don't use the Raptor, you can set this where you want, you can play with it. But mine is set here, I like it, that's controlled, it never changes. The other thing that I want to set is the stick out. And someone asked me about the stick out length before too. This is just a block of oak with a hole drilled in it 2 inches deep. So I just go like that and I'm consistent every time. I don't think it matters if this is an inch or I mean 2 inches or 1 3/4. It's more about the consistency so that you're always grinding on the same spot and you're not wasting a lot of steel. So my leg is set. Stick out is set. The only thing I have to do now is move the V-arm in and out. And you can do the same thing we did earlier. Put magic marker on here. If you've got a grind and you like it and you want to repeat it, just put magic marker, move the V-arm in and out until you're removing all the marker and you're good to go. If you want, you can make just a little jig like this out of scrap. And all this does is the notches, all they really do is to fit around with the parts here. So it just sits on top of the V-arm, comes back, rests against the pocket, and I just slide this forward until I contact the wheel. There, I'm set, and this is my 50-degree piece of wood. Here's one that's 40 degrees. So this is the one I would use for my spindle gouge here. So if you want to do 60, you make one for 60. It's just the more obtuse, the more blunt the angle, the bigger this distance has to be. Okay. Pretty straightforward now. All I have to do is put the arm in the V pocket here. What I would like to do is to hold, I hold on to the jig here. I seem to have the best control that way. And now it's just a matter of rotating the tool to the side. Now this is what I would call a fingernail grind. Fingernail grind is where the wings would be swept back about the same length as the flute is. Mine's maybe a little bit longer than that, so some might call that a modified fingernail grind. If you've ever seen the Irish grind or the Ellsworth grind, where the wings come way back to here, you can do that on here. The amount of wing that you create is based on how much you swing this tool around. If I wanted that big Ellsworth wing, I just keep swinging this way. If I want a more traditional grind, I don't swing much at all. So you have to move the tool to get the shape that you want. But this jig controls all the angles for you, which is the hard part. So let me just, so in here, some people would say grind one wing, grind the other wing, and then blend the nose to the two wings. And the reason that people say that is because if you try to go from here all the way to here, you tend to spend more time on the nose. It just kind of gets stuck there. And then you kind of do this. And if you do that, you get what's called a bird's beak. So if you overgrind on the nose, you spend too much time on the nose, you're going to get that bird beak there. And that you don't want that. That makes your tool really grabby and it's going to catch. So that's why you don't make the full swing. The other thing too is if you've got the tools where this comes out of the handle, it's much easier to do that. Like me, I've got to kind of dodge this. I got to get out of the way of the handle. But if you can get the handle off and out of the way, it just makes it much easier to do. What I have ended up doing somehow, just what I do is I go from the wing to the very tip, and then to the other wing to the very tip, and I'm done. And the reason I do that is because when you're cutting with this, this part of the edge here, you're never ever cutting with the very tip. The tools are just they're going to self-feed, they're too grabby and too aggressive. So you're always cutting with one side or the other. So I don't necessarily care if the very tip of my tool isn't perfect because I'm never going to cut with that anyway. I'm more concerned about this. I'm going to cut with this. I'm going to shear straight with all of that wing. And if I'm hollowing a bowl or doing the outside, I'm cutting with this part of the wing down here, either this part or that part. So that's why I do that, but just do whatever is comfortable for you, but just be aware, don't overgrind the wing and make it, the nose and make it look like that. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to start on one wing. The middle, and see I got the handle, I kind of got to do that dance to get out of the way and switch sides. Going to look at it. Yeah, I ground a fresh edge. I can tell it's all clean and ground. And I can evaluate my shape. So probably I'm going to look at it and make sure I didn't grind a bird's beak, and I didn't. I'll look at my wings. I want my wings to be either flat or slightly convex. You don't want concave. You don't want the wings to make a big negative dip. So that's bad. That's gonna, you're not gonna be able to shear scrape with it, and it's not gonna cut as well. You want your wings to either be straight or a slight radius is okay too. The radius is going to be a little bit less aggressive, a little bit less grabby. So if you're just starting, maybe put a little radius on there. A perfectly flat wing is it's probably going to cut just a little bit better, and it's going to give you a bigger surface if you want to shear scrape. But that's the reason, either flat or a slight radius. So this is done. That was pretty quick. I can go right back to work. So there's really not much of a reason to not use a jig. Yes.
So if you make a mistake and you do that, you have to just grind the tool a little shorter and start over.
Just grind away the parts that are too big until you're down to the, I would just, if you're on the side like this and on the side like that until you get things back to a nice radius. What you want is you want your cutting edge to follow the radius that's the inside of the flute. So we didn't really talk about that, but some flutes are more of a V shape, some are more of a U shape, and I think most of them nowadays are it's a parabolic curve, which is kind of the best of both worlds. So you want to follow kind of the shape, and the jig, for the most part, does that for you. The only other thing that I would mention about this before I pass it around is, I don't know, Tom, if you can, let's see, get it in front of my shirt maybe. I ground the heel off on the bevel, and the reason to do that, you're creating a micro bevel up here. This is a little long, so I'm gonna want to grind that down some more. But you'd like this main bevel to be about 1/8 of an inch, 3/16, big enough to feel. If it's too small, you can't really feel it, and you want to be gliding that bevel over your work so that you've got a nice controlled, clean cut. But by taking that heel out, that gives you more clearance on the inside of a bowl. So this is a 50 degrees on this one. So at some point on a bowl, this is going to come around, and I'm going to start hitting the edge of the bowl here. But by taking that heel off, it gets me just a little bit more swing, and maybe it's enough to get to the bottom of the bowl. The other thing is, if you've ever left those little perfectly circular ridges, bruises on the inside of a bowl, that's from your heel rubbing as you're making that turn. And by grinding that off, that will eliminate that. So you can do that by hand, or you can take, here's just like a 1/2 inch piece of plywood. I stick it in there, and now I can, I don't have to do any work to grind the heel off. It puts the tool a 1/2 inch closer, and now I can just come up here. Take the heel off, and I'm just going to keep doing that until I get my primary bevel to 3/16 to 1/8 of an inch. Something like that. Let me pass. This is a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. So a bowl gouge that's made in Europe, the way they measure it is they measure from the inside of one flute to the outside of the round stock. So from here to there is a 1/2 inch. So it's a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. That stock is actually 5/8. So if you bought a bowl gouge that was manufactured in the United States, the US manufacturers would call this a 5/8 bowl gouge because this is 5/8. And the same thing with spindle gouges. Spindle gouges are sized by the size of the round stock. So that's a 3/8 inch spindle gouge. This is a 1/2 inch bowl gouge because it's a European manufacturer, not an American manufacturer. Okay, spindle gouge, I could do it, but it's exactly the same. It goes into the very grind. I don't move the leg. It goes into here. I get the 2-inch stick out. My V arm is set for 50 degrees. Because I have a CVN wheel, it never gets smaller. This never changes. If you did a lot of turning and grinding, and you're touching up your stone wheel, eventually that wheel gets smaller. So you have to keep moving your V arm in to keep the same angle, but you don't have to do that with CVN. This spindle gouge, I would just use my 40-degree jig to set the arm, and now I've got 40 degrees on the nose instead of 50 that's on my bowl gouge. So I'm not gonna, because it's exactly the same. So let me just pass that spindle gouge around. Okay.
You didn't grind the bottom edge there.
Yeah, because on a spindle, if you think about it, you're cutting beads and coves. You're never
going that deep.
You're never going that deep. You're just using the tip. But if it ever got in the way for something you were working on, just go ahead and grind it off. Because that part will never cut. I mean, that's never going to be part of your cutting edge. You're always going to be grinding that away. So, yeah. So I'm done with the V arm unless there's any questions on. Go back to the platform. We just have 2 tools left. Maybe 3 if we have time. But I'm going to do the traditional ground bowl gouge, and we're just going to do this on the platform by hand. And this is super simple. It's just like the spindle roughing gouge. There's no swing. All we do is put it on the platform and turn it. Some people wouldn't even bother with the platform, so they would total freehand it. Just kind of come up here like this, start grinding, take it up till they see they're at the cutting edge, and turn it. And you can do that if you want, but I kind of a little bit more of a numbers guy, so I want it to be, I want this to be 60 degrees. And the reason this is just a regular 1/2 inch bowl gouge, but I ground at 60 degrees because sometimes you need 60 degrees to get to the bottom of a deep bowl. So if you've got a real shallow bowl, you don't have any problems, hitting the edge out here. But if you've got a deep bowl like this, and you're trying to get down here, you can't do that with a 40 or a 50 degree bevel. And that's where this comes in. 60 degrees will let you get around that corner more. And also you'll notice that I've ground the bevel off for the same reason. And I mentioned, I've got this one sharpened with a traditional grind because I use this on the bottom of bowls or on platters. And that's where this grind excels. The wings are almost, they're tilted back maybe 5 degrees, but they're almost straight up and down. There's like no wing here. And for whatever reason, that just cuts that end grain better than, than a fingernail grain. So that's what this tool is for. So I'm going to want to get this at 60 degrees. So sometimes you got to move both of those to get to. Out there. I'm on the heel, so I got to tip the platform forward. This is where you gotta be careful you don't drive your platform into your CVN wheel. So I'm getting a little close, I'm gonna back it off some more. Okay, there we go. So super simple to grind. It's just turn and no swing. No swing like this at all. Just a turn. Done. Any questions on the bottom of the bowl gouge or the traditional grind? Okay. All right, well, that just leaves, well, let's see. 825. Yeah. Let me just talk about this. So this, if you've ever heard of the Stewart Patty 4040 bowl grind, that's what this is. You've seen Stewart on YouTube, or some of you have maybe taken a class with him. He's a real proponent of this. And all that is it's a 40-degree bevel, because from Stewart says that is the perfect grind angle, because it's aggressive enough so that you don't have to push it. So you can kind of turn, you can hollow a bowl like this with just like one hand, you don't have to push on it at all. But it's not so pointy that it self-feeds. You know, if it were 30 degrees, it would be grabbing, it would want to pull itself into the wood. And from his perspective, if it's 60, you got to push on it a little bit harder. So he's saying 40 is the perfect angle. And then the wings are also back at 40 degrees this way. So I think if you look at my my bowl gouges going around that was done with this and this, they look real similar. So I don't know. This is more of a curiosity idea for me. Just, you know, I was just practicing to see if I could do it. I've used it. It works fine. That's one other thing to keep in mind, is that this is a 3/8 bowl gouge. So if you want to get, you know, you're getting a little bit of tear out, say with your 1/2-inch gouge. A smaller gouge, for whatever reason, I don't know the science behind it, it cuts cleaner, you know, less tear out, you'll get a better finish surface cut. So keep that in mind. It's a reason to have both a 3/8 and a 1/2-inch bowl gouge. As if you needed a reason to get more tools. All right, so my platform is set at 40 degrees. I just did it by hand, but I could have used one of my jigs to set it at 40. Forgot about it. But so my platform's at 40. One of the other things that Stewart recommends, and I see whoever this belongs to has already done this. They've scribed 40-degree lines on here. So what that is that's kind of your guideline as to how to position the shaft of your tool. So if I swing it past that 40-degree line, I'm not going to have 40 degrees on the wing. I'm going to have 30 degrees. If I don't swing up to the line, I'm going to have 45 degrees on my wing or whatever. But Stewart's position on the 40-40 grind is that by having the nose and the wing at 40 degrees, when you're cutting a bowl, the wing is kind of peeling the wood out of the way. It's kind of a rough, tear out prone cut, which is getting wood out of the way. And then the nose is coming along right behind it and making a nice clean slicing cut. So it's you can take a lot of wood out in a hurry, but still have a nice clean cut. So that's why he's a real proponent of that 40-40 grind. So all you've got to do is hold it on the platform, get it, you know, at the right angle, and then swing to follow the, you know, the flute shape, the parabolic flute shape. So it's not that easy. Again, the recommendation is to do one wing, do the other wing, blend at the nose. I found I have better luck just taking one wing down to the middle of the nose, stopping, doing the other wing. What you don't want to do here, if you notice on the gouges that I've sent around, the bowl gouge that I sharpened with this, there are no facets, there are no flats. And you want that so that you can continue to rub, glide that bevel across your wood, keep the edge in contact. If you've got facets or flats, you might not be able to ride that bevel so well, and then your tool is going to start to scrape, and it won't, the edge won't last as long. So I'm going to give this a try, and we're going to see how it goes. So 40 degrees, come up. I'm getting the inside of the flute is kind of parallel to the platform here, so that I'm sharpening at the edge, the cutting edge. Then you come up, I'm out of contact. I got, again, this would be easier without a handle, but mine doesn't come on. So. All right, we'll call it good. You'll see I left just a little bit of magic marker up here, so I didn't get all the way up here on that wing, but that wing up here is only going to be used for shear scraping, and I'm probably not ever going to get that close to this anyway. So I think this is fine. I just want to make sure I don't have a bird's beak. Yeah, I don't like that. Okay, so I got a little, well, maybe I'll just pass it around like this. I would take this back and touch that up. But if you notice right at the tip, there's a little bit of a sharp edge that's sticking out, and that'll leave a little groove in your wood. So I would touch that up. I'm gonna look at my wings. I want my wings to be either flat or slightly concave. My wings are fine. I just got a little bit of a piece of steel sticking out here that I would go back, but I'm going to leave it so you can see what not to do. Okay, any questions on that? I just have one last thing I was going to talk about. The what?
And great.
Okay, which is what I just did. Yeah, the freehand grinding. So actually, it's more appropriately called platform grinding because I'm grinding on a platform. If you look at Richard Graffin's book or somebody that's a professional turner for 20 years, they don't even use the platform. They're just going to walk up with the tool and just, you know, by hand. You can do that. That's total freehand grinding, where you would just walk up to the tool, no platform or anything, and just do your swinging or whatever. So that's if you're a professional, it's probably worth learning how to do that, because you wouldn't, you know, waste any time setting up a jig. How many of you have like the little hollowing tools where you've got the little scrapers like this that fit? These things are kind of a, I don't know. I never really knew how to sharpen them. To me, if I took it to here, eventually it would be gone. Right? I just grind it away. So that's where these little diamond paddles come in very handy. You can again, I would use marker so that I could see what I was doing. And if I was using this to hollow something really hard and dense, I would do this clearance bevel first, and then hone off the burr. I have no burr up here at all, because for hard, dense material, that's what's going to work the best. Just like a scraper, this is a scraper. If you got a burr on there for something really hard and dense, it's going to be too aggressive. If I was doing any of the North American hardwoods or softwoods, I would I would do the top first. So I would take the old burr off. So it's just, that's it. And some people would actually, that's all they would do. They would never touch this. And this will cut, but not quite as aggressively as if I put a burr on there. So the trick is to just kind of, again, rest your hone on the edge there and just come around and follow it. Okay, I got most of it, but I missed a little at the tip here, so I'm going to do it again. That's the beauty of the magic marker. Okay, so now I have the tiniest little burr up there, which is probably what I want for this tool. So I'll pass this around. Just, you can feel it with your fingernail, but that's all it takes. Is that. So I'm just using the hone to raise that burr up, and that's what's going to cut. Okay, that's it. Any final questions? All right, thank you.